Hi, Jen. Good morning. It's probably afternoon your time. Where are you in Florida, right?
It is, yes. Good morning, good day. How's that?
It works. Thank you so much for taking the time. I really appreciate it. I know we're all busy, so I really, really value your opinion and showing up to the Unhustle community. And I want to kick it off by saying congratulations on the book.
Thank you.
Awesome. I know you just hit a couple of bestseller lists, so now
We
you're
did, yes.
officially a best-selling author.
It's a very cool feeling. So thank you.
And that's awesome. That's a great accomplishment. So how does it feel to have such a big accomplishment under your belt in such challenging times?
You know, I mean, putting the challenging times aside, I'm not sure that I ever dreamt of the fact that I would be a best-selling author. So it is pretty cool. I will say that, like many things during the pandemic, it's just kind of going on the list of things that we need to celebrate that we haven't really gotten to celebrate in the way that we want to. But it's a pretty amazing feeling. And I think, you know, staying true to the concepts of unhustle, I probably need to do a better job of stepping back and letting myself celebrate it and feel it and let it soak in.
Oh, well, wait a second, wait a second. I think you pushed hard to get the book going, but then you went on a 10-day digital detox retreat.
I did, yes.
Yes, so I want to
That feels
dive
like a
deeper.
distant memory, though.
I want to get into that experience and your light bulbs moment from that because obviously that's where I think a lot of aha moments happen.
Yeah.
But let's take a step back. And for those of you who don't know you, you have one of the coolest titles, Chief WellBeing Officer. In my book, you're under pioneers. So I want to dive into, obviously, that came as a result of a burnout, and you've been with Deloitte for, I want to say, 20 years.
20 years, yeah.
Not that I'm stalking you online, but that's what I hear.
It's
so,
okay.
uh,
Talk away.
tell me the story. How did you come up with the title?
Yeah. So how did I actually didn't come up with the title. One of the our former CEO, who actually Kathy Engelbert, she's now the commissioner of the WNBA. She went on after Deloitte to become the commissioner. So she's the one that coined the title of Chief Wellbeing Officer, and is a pivotal and critical part of my success and the focus that we have at Deloitte on well-being. But as you said, I've been here for a long time, and about 7 years ago I did find myself completely burnt out to the point where I really couldn't get out of bed or engage in work or in life in any meaningful way. I had let myself kind of go that far, or that long without dealing with my burnout. And one of the main reasons is because I processed burnout as failure, because I looked around and everybody else seemed to have it together. Everybody else seemed to be able to show up to all the demands and all the roles in their life, and I couldn't. And so I just kind of kept kicking the can down the road, saying, oh, I'll rest when this project is over, or I'll sleep on the weekend, or and I was struggling with my mental health, with depression and anxiety. And so for anybody that can relate to that, sleep sleep and rest don't come easy when you're struggling with your mental health. So it was just a whole bunch of compounding factors that really forced me to have to take time off. I didn't have much of a choice. And in doing that and in getting well, I became very passionate about the fact that, like, this is no way to live, and we shouldn't be okay with you know giving so much to work and sacrificing so much else related to our life and our personal health and well-being, that we end up at burnout. And so that kind of created my personal mission. I actually didn't think that I was going to stay at Deloitte. And I was prepared to kind of resign and leave, and that's what I went into my leader's office to do. And she pushed back on me. She basically said, "You're not leaving. If you need this, then everybody else at Deloitte needs it too." So that started really the journey of well-being at Deloitte, and kind of the genesis of the role that I'm in today.
Awesome. Are you still happy doing it?
I am still happy doing it. Look, I mean, I get to live and work my passion and purpose every day. But it's still work. And I think one of the things that I personally struggle with is I'm so passionate about it that I oftentimes don't say no when I should say no. And I oftentimes, need to take a dose of my own medicine and, not just preach, but practice what I preach. So they say, because, because I'm so passionate about it, I think, and there's so much research, as that shows this. People that are very passionate about their jobs are really high performers, are actually at a higher risk of burnout, because I want to say yes to everything. And usually my husband's the one that reminds me that, like, I'm saying yes to too much. And then I'm like, okay, got it.
Thank God for these husbands, right? Well,
Yeah, exactly.
I think a lot of, and I'm going to speak kind of in generalization, but I see a lot of people in that wellness and well-being space who are passionate about helping and serving and leading, don't necessarily walk the talk. At least that's what I'm seeing from a lot of people I speak with. So on a day-to-day basis, and I see you publishing so much and being on Instagram and showing and leading and publishing all these amazing articles in the book. And I have no idea what the rest of the job entails. I'm sure I'm sure it's a lot more than just what I'm seeing. So how do you, on a day-to-day basis, what is a day in the life of Jen, and how do you walk the talk
Yeah.
as much as
So
you can?
first of all of those things that you mentioned, plus, the things that I do internally for my day job, don't happen without other people and don't happen without having an amazing team. And I think, that is certainly a lesson learned kind of from my own burnout, right? Is that you really can't do it all. And so there are lots of tips and tricks, especially related to social media, that you can deploy, that mean you don't always have to be on social media, even though you might appear to be. So there's some things that happen in the background that,
Right.
that I'm not always on social. But for me, I mean, a day in the life, first of all, sleep and exercise are non-negotiables for me. If you do follow me on social media, I post my workouts sometimes, not all the time. I'm not one of those people that post myself all the time, but that's okay if you do. But so sleep and exercise are my non-negotiables. So I do not negotiate my sleep away. It doesn't matter who you are or where I am. My friends at home, there's a running joke for many years that I just, I the Irish exit, right? Like, I'm out. Like, I'm there 1 second, I don't even say goodbye. I just leave. Same thing when when I used to travel, or when I'm traveling for work, my team will send me to bed. They'll be like, Jen, it's your bedtime. You need to go to bed. And so, because I after so many years of being sleep deprived, and then really learning how it feels to get, like, to be well rested, after a good night's sleep. Now when I don't sleep well, I think that's part of the reason my team sends me to bed, because you don't want to be around me when I'm not well rested. I am not a nice person to be around. And then exercise is really important to me. I lifelong athlete, but I think more the older I've gotten, the more the exercise is, it's a ritual, and it's so much about it's obviously about my physical health, but also my mental health. It really helps me with with my worry and my anxiety and those things. And so they're in my calendar. And they might, the workout might move around from the morning to the afternoon, but it always happens. And sometimes it looks different. Sometimes it's going for a walk, sometimes it's going to the gym. But I'm very diligent about my calendar and what I allow on my calendar, and what I don't, and what can be accomplished in different ways, right? Like, not everything has to be a call or a video, not everything, so, and what can I actually delegate? And then what do I say no to? And so, I think those things are all, it's a daily pursuit, right? I think, you and I have talked about before, self-care has become this buzzword. And the marketing gurus of the world have convinced us that self-care means that we drink a bottle of wine on Wednesdays and we take a bubble bath on Sundays. But self-care to me is really, it's a daily pursuit, right? And it often means saying no to things that we want to say yes to. Like, it involves difficult decisions, because it's meant to, protect our well-being. And so I am pretty, diligent about a handful of those things in my life, because I have felt the effects of when I don't do those things. And so it starts to become pretty obvious to me. If my husband doesn't point it out, I start to kind of recognize, like, okay, I'm a little off, like, what's going on with me?
Right, right. Yeah, I can't agree more. I mean, I just had a night where I didn't sleep well, and the next day
Yeah.
I can't perform. I'm just not myself. I feel like I'm drunk, which is really funny to
Well, the
me
research
because
would say that you're probably, if you
half
drive
drunk.
sleepy, you're actually worse than kind of being legally drunk.
That's
So,
right. That's right. So yeah, I try to stick to my sleep routine and make my sleep as non-negotiable as possible. Although I have been suffering from sleep, I think a lot of people with sleep issues. I think a lot of people these days are, because there's just so much stress and anxiety. And
well, yeah, and the modern world is not set up to help us get good rest.
yeah,
Pretty much
yeah,
everything about our bedrooms is wrong.
yeah, pretty much. You talk about integrating work well-being in the flow of work. What do you mean by that?
Yeah, it's a great question. So, if you think about how organizations currently um, kind of deploy or have, well-being programs, well-being is delivered as it's a program, and it's a layer on top of the way that we have worked for years and years and years and years, even though, there's a whole bunch of new things about the workplace and the ways that we're working in terms of technology. We're still kind of working in a past industrial revolution way, right? And so the fourth industrial revolution is all about technology, but I would argue that when it comes to humans in the workplace, the fourth industrial revolution has actually, either turned humans into machines, or trying to turn humans into machines, or getting us to compete with our technology, right? And so, and I think the same way about well-being. I mean, historical well-being programs have been, okay, we have these programs and benefits available for you, we have these learning opportunities available to you if and when you have time, and whoever has time, right? And so the whole concept and the whole idea around embedding well-being into the flow of work is, how do you actually design your day, design your week, design your work and your work flows, so that there are moments, big and small, but mostly small, throughout the day, where you can kind of step back, go for a walk, take a few deep breaths, do some meditation, step away from your laptop for lunch, go connect with a colleague, pick up the phone, watch a funny, whatever your definition of well-being is, but actually looking at the flows of work and saying, okay, where are good points in my day? And you can do that as an individual. You can do that as a team. You can look at team behaviors and norms. So how do we do this, and how do we empower this and give people agency to do this as a team? But are also, what are our expectations? So being clear about expectations. And then at an organizational level, I mean, looking at things like, cultural or organizational barriers. And so, the way that we use our technology, the expectations around our technology, the physical workspaces that we're in, how we get our work done from an operational perspective, programs and policies that were designed and written, eons ago, that haven't been updated, that don't have the human at the center. And so there's a number of ways that you can look at doing this. I mean, I think the most powerful to me and what we've seen is teams. So team behaviors and norms, getting together as a team and saying, what do we want our work to look like? And teams are in large part empowered to do that, even within an organization that perhaps isn't doing that, right? So what do we want our standard working hours to be? When we're generally, if we're not working co-located, when are we generally online and reachable within a reasonable amount of time? How do we get in touch with each other off out of our standard working hours, so we're not all connected to email all the time or feel like we have to be? What do we want learning and development to be? Do we want it to be every other Friday from 2 to 3 p.m.? So carving out time in the workday and giving permission for people to carve out time in the workday to take care of themselves and to embed well-being behaviors throughout the day, because we've lost that completely almost. I mean, we go from meeting to meeting to meeting, even, those that are commuting or commuted before the pandemic, right? I mean, our commute times have now turned into time that we're sitting in front of our computers, where we weren't doing that before.
Yeah.
And so even though the hours in the day that we are working or kind of committed to work might be the same, the way we're spending those hours is very different, and it's burning us all out. And so we have to take a step back and design the way that we're working in a different way.
So thank you for that, Jen. I know there was Deloitte's been it's done some reports on well-being, obviously, and well-being shows up as number 2 priority, I think, for employees, but it shows up as number 9 for CEOs.
Yes.
Where is the disconnect coming from when all the studies and the research point to the fact that well-being contributes to performance? And how do we change this workism culture we find ourselves in that you talk about in the book about workism? I talk about all the time with Unhustle. So we know it's not, this focus on efficiency and productivity is not helping us in the long run. So help me figure out how we're going to go about changing culture.
Yeah. So, and the report you're referring to is the 2021 Global Human Capital Trend for Deloitte that I helped to co-author. And the context of that is that C-suite executives were in the context of business transformation. So all of the parts and pieces of business transformation, C-suite executives were asked to rank all of these things, and then the workforce was asked to rank it. And so there's still, so the good news is that it is now on the list. Workforce well-being is now on the list, which before 2020, I mean, it's what workforce well-being has actually been part of our human capital trend for a number of years, but it's in the top 10 now. And so I think we need to celebrate that, because I would say prior to 2021 or 2020, prior to the last couple of years, it wasn't even really on the list of things that C-suite executives were thinking about, right? At least now it's on the list. Is there there still is a sizable difference between what the workforce wants and what the C-suite wants. And so how do we close that gap? I mean, it's a great question. I think we're still figuring it out, because it is a huge transformation in terms of the way that we've always worked. And it hasn't been a leadership competency, right, to take to really truly care for the well-being of your team and of your workforce in the way that organizations are being expected to now. And so I personally think that the workforce is going to force it, because we're seeing that, right? I mean, we're seeing that with the Great Resignation. People are saying, I don't want to work for an organization that doesn't value me as a human being inside and outside of the workplace. I don't want to work for an organization that doesn't provide me with the opportunities to do meaningful work, to develop and grow. I mean, those are all the things. The Great Resignation that you and I have talked, I mean, in a lot of ways, it's not about money. The reason that people are leaving organizations, it's because they want a better life.
Yeah, exactly.
And so I think, the companies that are going to thrive are the ones that figure this out. And I do think that well-being and the flow of work, I think autonomy, I think flexibility, I think, I believe hybrid work is the way of the future. I mean, in our book, we talk about, the importance and the value of workplace relationships. And we know that even though you can sustain and maintain relationships in a virtual world, to really develop those relationships, you do need to be together, in some regular interval. That doesn't mean everybody needs to go to the office 5 days a week for 12 hours a day. That just means that in the moments that matter, in those critical moments, in those critical milestones, in those critical touch points with your workforce, people need to be together, because humans are wired for connection. So I think the organizations that get it right are going to be the organizations that, as we talk about in our book, that value well-being and that value human connection and human relationships, and create the space for that in the workday. It can't be an expectation that comes on top of 100% schedule of work. It needs to be part of the work and part of the expectation of being a colleague and being a leader in an organization.
Actually, what I just picked up from your book is you say becoming more human at work and nurturing the best in our relationships is the next great innovation.
Yep.
And let's unpack this a little bit, because I feel like all these new ways of thinking and new ways of working and transformation, which is what I call human culture. Let's change this hustle culture to human culture. Let's do it from a perspective of bringing in more humanity in the workplace, but at the same time, the skills of the future are going to be more the human skills, as you
Right.
talk about the book, right? Which don't happen while you're sitting in front of a computer necessarily.
Well, they don't happen when you're sitting in front of the computer, and they aren't the skills that are taught in business school or whatever school you go to, right? I mean, we have long called them soft skills, which I hate because they're not soft. They're human skills, they're essential skills, and they are the skills that, you know, we keep talking about them as the skills of the future. I think they're the skills of now, right? I mean, we need leaders that know how to lead and develop and grow and nurture people in a hybrid workforce, in a workforce that is living in a world that is constantly disrupted. We need leaders that know how to develop and build resiliency in their workforce. We need, and we need people that are well and taking care of themselves, because change is hard. And even though as humans we are constantly changing, when there's this much disruption and this much transformational change, we don't do well because it's too much and it's too big, right? But the more the more healthy we are mentally, physically, emotionally, financially, however you want to define it, the more adaptable we are, the more agile we are, right? And so, I unfortunately, on a whole lot of levels, the pandemic has done us no favors, right? Because I think
Right.
we're all just, I mean, pandemic fatigue is essentially burnout, and it's real. And so, business and the world are transforming at a time when all of us are feeling burnt out. And so it would be hard on a normal day. I think it's unfortunately exceptionally hard right now.
What do you have any specific strategies for becoming more resilient and being able to kind of roll with the punches here?
Well, taking a cue from you, meditation. No, but seriously, look, I think, the best strategies for becoming more resilient are well-being strategies, taking good care of yourself, getting enough sleep, eating nutritious foods, spending time doing things that bring you joy, spending time with people that that you feel connected with, that bring you a sense of belonging. I mean, that's why we wrote the book, because that you know with the workforce prior to the pandemic, 50% of the people were saying that they were burnt out on the job, or had been burnt out, or had experienced burnout more than once. I actually, in my own mind, think that that's probably a little low. I think during the pandemic it's close to 90 or 100% of people, but we know that human connection is an antidote to that, right? When we have people that we feel connected with, that we can reach out to and say, hey, I just need to vent, or hey, I need some help, or to not feel alone, right? I mean, that's one of the best antidotes to
Yeah.
to kind of what's going on, and to building resiliency. But outside of that, it's sleep, it's good nutrition, it's movement or exercise, it's all of those things. And then, I mean, meditation is incredible, working on your mindset, skills to work on your mindset, and, help you develop more of a growth mindset versus a fixed mindset. And that's a lot of work that I've had to do, because I am perpetually a fixed mindset person.
I didn't know
I
that about you.
I get stuck. I get dug in on the way things have to be, So, but I've done a lot of work there. So but again, but I think the place to start is by taking care of yourself.
I think I would agree. I think taking care of yourself is huge. It's number one. But I also think what you're doing with regards to having purpose
Absolutely.
could increase your resiliency. And to the point of your book, I think people and relationships is huge for resiliency.
Absolutely. And back to your point around workism, right? I mean, the whole workism, I mean, people define themselves by the job that they do, right? And our jobs, all of us, our jobs could go away tomorrow. And so if your purpose in life is the job that you're doing, so when I coach people about purpose and meaning and finding purpose and meaning, the first thing I tell people is separate it from the job that you do today. It might, for me, in my case, my purpose is related to the job. It is the job that I do every day, but the current job that I do every day could go away, and my purpose would still be to help people, develop and find well-being in their life. And so I think we do have to kind of remove that to say, okay, what really matters to me in my life. And if and then I truly believe that you can pull purpose through in your job every day, regardless of what your job is. You're interacting with other human beings, which most of us are. You can pull purpose through, and it doesn't matter what your job is. But you do have to define that for yourself. And I also think the thing about purpose, that I think is a myth, is that purpose has to be some big world changing thing that I'm going to do. Otherwise, I don't have purpose. And actually, it doesn't have to be. Your purpose can be you're doing something for your family or in your community, or just having a positive impact on every person that you come in contact with, right? You can bring it down to a personal level. You don't have to cure cancer, although I hope somebody does. Being a cancer survivor myself, and we need those people. But I also think that we what we get wrong about purpose is that people often feel like they have to do something that is really world changing or life changing to actually have purpose, and that's just not true.
I couldn't agree more. And yeah, when I tried to discover if there is a bigger purpose for me than doing marketing, which is what I used to do in my career, I went down on this big self-discovery journey, right? And that's when meditation and, I mean, I got deep into what are my values and what do I want to do and what are my talents and what is my calling, and read a bunch of books and did a whole bunch of research. All of this started by disconnecting from technology and going on a 10-day digital detox, which turned out to be a digital detox. I didn't plan it that way. So I want to go back to your recent experience, because sometimes I feel like perspective shifting happens during these experiences.
Yeah.
So I want to hear from you. I know it wasn't just no internet, but it was like no sugar and all kinds of.
Yeah.
It was a big reset for you in a way.
It was a full detox. No sugar, no alcohol, no caffeine. It was all vegan. Pretty much spent the majority of the day outdoors, being active, and then it was no Wi-Fi, no kind of strongly discouraged, other than maybe talking to your family or calling home every once in a while. So yeah, and so I'd never done something like that before, but I have read about it. I've talked to others, and I think you and I talked before I went, and I think my two biggest fears were no caffeine and no Wi-Fi.
So how'd you do?
So, I actually did great on both of those. No caffeine, the second day I had a headache for a little while, but then that subsided. And, the no Wi-Fi and no technology was actually a lot easier than I thought it was going to be. But I also didn't leave it to chance. Like, I set myself up for success. And so my team and we had a conversation before I went out, and this is kind of now a best practice that we're going to employ for everybody, on my team that goes on PTO. But we're like, okay, remove me from all email strings, remove me from any notifications in Teams or any other platforms that we use, and just keep a running list of, things that we need to connect on, or things that kind of happened while I was out. And so I wasn't getting, I didn't have that FOMO in my head of like, oh my gosh, I'm going to come back to, because I think one of the things that, for me, one of the excuses of why I've always checked email on vacation is that I didn't want to come back to 16,000 emails in my inbox, because that would just be really stressful. So instead, I'm going to clear my inbox once a day, but I would tell people that work for me, like, oh, you don't have to check email while you're on PTO. I'm going to do it because it works for me. And I realized that as a leader, like, you're not walking the talk. Like, you're saying one thing and you're doing something else, and people are like, okay, I hear you, and you do respect me when I'm out and I don't take and I don't check email, but if I aspire to be in a leadership role one day, does that actually mean that I do need to check email? And so that was like a big aha for me a while back. And so we talked about it. They removed me from all communications. That doesn't mean that I didn't get any emails, and we'll talk about that. But at least in my mind, I was like, you know what, they're not going to be emailing me, and they've got this, right? Part of it too, as a leader or a colleague, is trusting your team, right? Like they have your back and they can do the work. They don't need you. And from an ego perspective, that's sometimes hard to get over, but you get over it. And then I did a full like digital detox of my phone. Like I removed apps, I turned off all of my notifications, I moved social media into a folder in the last screen, like all of those things. I mean, I just basically made my phone something where I could text home to my husband, every night and be like, hey, I'm still alive and I love you. Good night. And that was really kind of the only communication that I did. And it was pretty, honestly, I thought it was gonna be a lot harder. It was pretty freeing. I mean, like the first 2 days I was like, okay, this is weird. Like, what am I supposed to do with myself when I'm not on my phone? But I brought books, and honestly, from being outdoors all day and exercising and yoga and all the things that we did, I mean, everybody was in bed asleep by 8 or 8:30 anyway. Like you were so tired that there wasn't really, like, I didn't really have a desire to check my phone or to be on social media or anything. And I think because I also mentally prepared myself for it. And I think that that's really important. But I will say, and you kind of talked about the ahas, when I was on the airplane home, I downloaded my emails, and I will tell you that about 40 to 50% of the emails that I deleted were reply to all messages of people saying things like, thank you, got it, I'm on it. And so I'm starting a campaign, and I think you'll join me, like death to reply to all, right? Like the reply to all button just needs to go away, or there needs to be a pop-up that says, are you sure you really want to reply to all? Or if you had to actually populate each one of these names individually, would you put every single one of these people in your reply to all? And the answer every single time is no. So why do we do it? Because it's just a reflex.
CYA. OA.
CYOA. Like, I mean, we could put something on the bottom of our email signature that says, like, don't, like, I really want to do this. Like, don't worry about replying to me and thanking me. Like, I know that you're grateful, or, like just making that assumption that, like, unless, I don't need to hear back from you unless you need something else, or unless we need to have dialogue. You don't need to say thank you.
I think it's an awesome campaign, Jen. I'm definitely gonna join you. I've been sabotaging emails for years now, going back to my corporate days when I explained to my boss that I don't need to be CC'd on every email.
Yeah.
Or responded to every email. And I also don't need to be in every meeting. So I actually got myself out of meetings on Fridays and I started working from home way back in the days. I tried to outsource my job to India, but he wouldn't go for it. So it wasn't going to work.
Yeah, but I mean, I think those are, when you talk about well-being and the flow of work, right? Those are things that every organization, every person they don't cost any money, right? Like,
right.
I think, it's habit, and it's technology enables it. You just said something, I don't need to be in every meeting. I think one of the things with technology is that it's really easy to invite everyone and anyone to a meeting. And then that person feels obligated because they got invited. So they feel like they need to say yes to that meeting when they may not need to be there. And when you have a meeting, especially a virtual meeting with 25 people, nothing really gets done. There's only 3 or 4 people that are talking, and the rest of the people are listening. So there's got, like, can they read notes? Can they listen to it later? Can you just follow up with action items? Like, we need to really rethink meetings, the way we're working, the way we're have you read Cal Newport's A World Without Email?
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So, I mean, that in itself is just like a big light bulb, right? That, like, email was never meant to be used the way that we're using it, and it is burning us all out.
It's horrible.
Yeah.
And the other thing I'm hearing, at least from people, and some of these people, may work with you or close to you, is that basically when they're in a meeting, they still have to get their work done, and so they continue to work. So they're really not paying attention to the meeting.
They're not paying attention because multitasking is just rapid task switching,
Yeah.
So, yeah.
And then they're not really working either.
Yeah. And they're not working either. And if they are working, the quality of their work is not going to be great. I mean, you asked me about my, kind of well-being practices. If you look at my calendar on any given day, I have block time for focus time. I have time for, breakfast, lunch, dinner, 2 snacks, workout, bedtime, but I block focus time. And my executive assistant is very good. She knows she will not schedule anything there without asking me. And we move it around if we need to, but it's, I mean, chunking up your day as much as possible to say, okay, I'm going to give this 30 minutes or this hour to checking email. I'm going to give this hour or two to focus time. I'm going to, and that's not possible for everyone all the time, every single day. It's not possible for me every single day, but more often than not, can I generally make it work? And it makes a huge difference.
Thank you. I do the same, and I don't schedule any meetings or phone calls in the morning.
Yep.
Before that, but again, I'm in a different situation, and I know for a lot of people who are like people pleasing, it's hard to set up these boundaries, and so it's hard to push back, especially when there's opportunity, especially including a lot of entrepreneurs. It's really hard to say no, and so I realized I have to be happy with what I'm accomplishing on my terms and not be constantly striving and constantly competing, constantly comparing. But that's really hard.
What's your defining success for yourself versus the
Which was
comparison?
Going to be my next question for you. How do you define success?
So how do I define success? So for me, I think, if I look back in terms of what we've accomplished at Deloitte from a well-being perspective, are we all the way there? No. We may not ever be all the way there, because I think well-being is an evolving journey for every individual and an evolving journey for every organization. And so for me, it's, forward progress in, in the role that I'm doing, but in my life, it is, it's really about the individual impact. I mean, the most meaningful things to me are the messages or the interactions that I have with people that say, you did this, or you said this, or you recommended this, and I did it, and it made a huge impact on me. And so again, it goes back to kind of the human impact. And then I think just personal success is, I mean, feeling like I'm contributing to the greater good of the world, regardless of how big or how small. And that changes, it's up and down. Right. But also, taking care of myself and I mean, that has a whole new meaning. Like I said, I'm a cancer survivor. I think that, in a lot of ways changed my perspective too. And so, making sure success to me is sticking to my boundaries and making sure that I'm caring for my self-care non-negotiables and things like that. And so I think it's depending on, is it work success? I mean, I think there's different types of success, but I will say that I think one of the biggest factors of my burnout, when I did burnout, was that I had no definition of success for myself. And so I was looking around saying, oh, okay, that person's successful, I'm going to do that. That person's successful, I'm going to do that. That person's, and I was doing a whole bunch of things, and I was perhaps succeeding at them, but they weren't really my definition of success. It was just a perceived, what I perceived other people that I thought were successful were doing. And so it wasn't, intrinsic. It was kind of this external definition of success, and that I was always striving. Nothing was ever good enough. That I was always striving to like be, whatever the next thing was that I was doing. And, do I still suffer a little bit from that today, to be honest? Yeah.
I think it's really hard to change that behavior, to be honest with you. And I've learned to realize that I'm okay with it as long as I'm aware of it, and I know what to do when I start going down that path.
Absolutely.
Okay, so bottom line, Jen, in like one sentence.
Combine work. I'm too wordy. I can't do stuff in one sentence.
I'm gonna push. We'll make it fun. In one sentence, combine work and life success.
Combine work and life success.
Because you and I have talked, I'll give you some more time to think, because you and I have talked about that there's no such thing as work-life balance and work-life integration, right? It's all living.
So I think my mission in life is really to to live a life, to be an example of what living a life of well-being looks like for other people, so I can inspire others.
There you go.
So
Yeah, you're very purpose connected. Very
yeah.
purpose connected.
So that's, that's inside or outside of work. So there you go.
Yeah. No, I like that a lot. I like that. Jen, I can keep talking to you forever and ever, for weeks and months. We're gonna have to go to. We're gonna have to go to one of these retreats together. I'll actually invite you to an Unhustle retreat. There you go.
There you go.
There you go. You're gonna have to come to Mexico and leave your phone behind because it gets sandy and salty and it's not good for it.
Count me in. I'm all in.
Awesome. Good luck with your continued success, which I'm sure it will be with the book. If I can help anyway, let me know. And keep doing what you're doing and keep smiling and keep exercising. You're inspiring me.
I will do all of those. Thank you very much. And we'll talk soon, I'm sure.
Thank you, Jen. Have a good day.
All right. Take care. Bye-bye.